Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Light Sports Ramble. It is New Year's Eve, and we are excited today. I am Troy Otradovic. As always, I'm joined with my co-host, Evan Witallison. Evan, it's New Year's Eve, which means tomorrow is New Year's Day and a lot of bowl games. And, of course, you and I, huge Badger fans, got the Capital One Bowl tomorrow, Wisconsin Badgers, South Carolina Gamecocks. We are also joined today with a special guest, Dave Radcliffe, to be able to preview Wisconsin football. I'm going to let you give the introductions, Evan, and we'll take it away and get right into some Badger football.
As Troy said, we're pleased to have Dave on the show. Dave's a lead writer for Badger football at Bleacher Report, and he's a freelance writer at Yahoo Sports covering the Brewers and Packers and does wonderful work on those sites. And it's a pleasure to have you on to talk some Badger football.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Well, we'll get right.
Anytime, you're welcome on anytime.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be talking a lot of Brewer stuff, Dave. But let's get right into it, Dave. Let's go right down into the preview. I mean, we were talking a little bit before the show. Badgers, Gamecocks looks pretty even when we're looking at stats and the way that these teams match up. But just take us right into it. Give us some of the key points for the game tomorrow.
Well, I think obviously the biggest thing to look at with the Badgers and the Gamecocks is how well the Badgers are able to run the football against South Carolina's run defense. They have a very stout front. Obviously, everyone knows about Jadeveon Clowney, but he's really, opened up some other opportunities for players on that line. And they have one of the top run defenses in the SEC, which means, they're pretty legitimate. But the Badgers have James White back there, Melvin Gordon. Both have had pretty stellar years, so I think that's the number one area you really have to look at when previewing this game.
Yeah, they're both over 1,000 yards. And my one question here, Dave, when I look at it, I know they have a good run defense, but how do you think we should attack this defense? I mean, we're used to watching Big Ten, but is it going to be between the tackles? Do they have to get outside? What do you think the best way to attack this South Carolina run defense is?
Well, I think you definitely have to mix it up. I think one of the most successful plays the Badgers have run this year is kind of the different options they do with the jet sweep. They'll do a little kind of reverse action, having Melvin come off the edge. So, if they can do different options out of that and kind of get it outside and make them at least think about that, that should open up some opportunities to run it, at least off the edge or up the middle. So I think they really have to try and keep them off their toes with the run game, or keep them on their toes with the run game. And I also wouldn't be surprised to see the Badgers, try and go to the air a little bit early, instead of just going with the traditional, run on first down, run on second down stuff. Just, again, to mix it up. And because South Carolina knows that Badgers are going to eventually just try and ground and pound it. That's their MO. So, but I think the Badgers just need to be a little more unpredictable on offense. That'll open up some opportunities.
Now, what impact do you see Clowney having in this game? He's had a very quiet year with, after having high expectations coming into the season. He's only had 3 sacks on the year, and I've heard, people talking how he's pretty much just given up on the year, knowing that he's going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. What kind of impact do you see him having in this game? Do you see him, bringing it one last time, or do you see him kind of playing the way he has been?
Well, I think he'll bring it for a January 1st bowl game. I know he's dealt with some injuries this year, too, and obviously teams, after his season he had his freshman year, are really going to key in on him, double team him and stuff like that. And the Badgers, their offensive line has had its issues. Overall, still a pretty solid offensive line with the way they're able to run the ball. And they also have some excellent blocking tight ends with Patterson, Wozniak on the edge, and you can see them, chipping the DNs or at least staying into help. James White is an excellent pass blocker as well when Stavey drops back to pass. So, Clowney, he might have his moments, but he really hasn't had many this year. And the way the Badgers are able to block, I think they'll be able to keep him at bay for the most part.
Okay. And you had mentioned possibly going through the air with Stavey. I know Troy pretty much has the same concern I do. What impact do you see Stavey being able to have in this game? Because he's been pretty up and down, consistency-wise. Like, what impact do you see him having?
Well, I think he's going to have a pretty noticeable impact because there are going to be certainly going to be situations where the Badgers are going to have to go to the air Obviously, they have the most success running the play action pass with Stave under center. But, yeah, I mean, Aberdair's obviously really the only player he trusts out there. Pedersen to a degree. But besides that, there's really no one that Stave seems to trust to turn to. And we've seen him, miss the open targets several times this year. He's been inconsistent on the deep ball and also just seems to stare down his intended targets way too much, which is usually Aberdair's, which has resulted in some interceptions. So I think South Carolina, again, has an overall good defense. They're good at defending the pass. They're good at defending the run. So he's going to have success. The Badgers will need to develop a solid run game to open up some opportunities through the air.
Well, let's turn the tables a little bit, Dave, and let's go across the ball then defensively. And I know Connor Shaw at South Carolina, I was amazed when I looked at the stats with Shaw. Not only can he put the ball in the air, he has, let me just find, 658 rushing yards, I noticed. But I think the biggest stat I saw with Shaw is he only has one interception. And so he protects the ball very well. But he doesn't really have, when I looked at the receiving stats, it looks like he's really been spreading the ball around. So defensively, what do you think the Badgers' key will be tomorrow in the Capital One Bowl with Shaw behind center? Because he's a very legitimate quarterback that can really cause some damage to this defense.
Yeah, I don't think people have really talked enough about what Shaw's done this season. Only having one interception is pretty amazing, and I think that has to do with, his threat to run. I know they don't run like a traditional, read option, really, but he can, they do some design plays with him, and the Badgers have faced several running quarterbacks this season and done a pretty good job of containing them for the most part when they want to run. It's been when they pass has been the issue with how inexperienced the secondary is for Wisconsin. But, I mean, I could definitely see Shaw having a pretty big impact with his arm just because of the threat that you have to take into account that he can run the football and has a good running back behind him. So, yeah, Shaw is probably the number one player to watch, I would say, on offense for South Carolina.
And when I looked at
Wisconsin's defense, how important is it having Michael Caputo back? I know he missed the Penn State game with the concussion. How important is it having him back with trying to contain Shaw in the passing game?
I think it's huge to have him back. Clearly, his impact was felt not being in there against Penn State with, the passes that were getting over the safeties and receivers getting behind those safeties, like McAvoy and Nate Hammond. But, with Caputo, he can also, he almost plays like an outside linebacker role, and he's really good at playing near the line of scrimmage. He's the second leading tackler on the Badgers. And, he's also solid when they need him to be back there playing next to Desmond Southward. So I think his return is very pivotal.
The one thing that we were talking about before, Dave, when we look at just pure stats, I mean, Badgers averaging 35.8 points per game. You got the South Carolina averaging 34 points per game. Which way do you see this going? Do you see that holding true, 35-34 type ball game, or do you see these two defenses that are very good keeping this a low-scoring game? Which way would you tend to go with this? Defensive game, offensive game?
Well, it's always tough when you're talking about bowl games because they always seem to go any way, and you never know. It's teams having about a month to prepare for them. I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see this one become a shootout, though, with, there's some vulnerabilities on Wisconsin's end when it comes to defending the pass, and the Badgers can pretty much run it against anybody with, if one guy isn't hot, whether it be Melvin Gordon as of late, James White has really picked up the play. But yeah, on the other side, you've seen the Badgers, like last season, in this 20-14 bowl game, with two good defenses going at each other, and these two defenses are really good. So, it's really could go either way. It's really hard to say, but I wouldn't be surprised either way.
Now, how surprised are you that Wisconsin, a Big Ten team, is actually favored in this matchup against South Carolina, an SEC team? Like, how surprised are you on that? I was quite surprised when I saw that.
Absolutely, I was surprised. The Badgers obviously they really haven't been blown out of the water for the last probably 3 years, I would say, in games. And I think that has a lot to do with the line being close, obviously, in the first place. But South Carolina is ranked 10 spots ahead of Wisconsin. They play in the SEC. they didn't end up making the SEC championship game, which is kind of disappointment on their end. But, that's a solid football team all the way around. They can put points on the board, and they have one of the best defenses and one of the toughest conferences in football. And the Big Ten, has obviously been scrutinized as of late for not having a good conference from top to bottom. I was surprised to see Wisconsin open up there as I think it was 1-point favorites, depending on what the books were. But, obviously very surprising, just like you.
So when we look at this game, we're talking about, two great teams going at it. And you and I had talked in the beginning, but for the listeners that, either don't follow college football, don't follow the Badgers, let's talk a little bit about coming down to special teams. A lot of games come down to special teams, and if this game is close, it could come down to a field goal. Let's talk about the field goal kicking situation with Wisconsin and with South Carolina. When I look at South Carolina, it's almost like that guy's automatic. He's missed maybe 2 or 3 times this year. Badgers have struggled with their kicking game. So let us know how you see that playing out. If it comes down to a field goal, just kind of go over both of the kicking games with both teams.
Good. Well, obviously the one I know more about would be Wisconsin, and they've had a pretty tumultuous season there in the field goal kicking, starting off with Kyle French, who won't be with the team next year, as was announced earlier. They've changed who kicks off to start, after a score, with Andrew Endicott handling that duty now. And now the field goal kicker, place kicker for them is Jack Russell. And he's actually done a pretty solid job since he's come on. The question has been about his leg strength, and they were even planning on going into a game with Chris Bowman being the long. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case coming into this game. I saw something
French
the other day that. What's that?
I was saying French nailed a pretty long field goal earlier this year, didn't he?
Yeah,
Like
he's probably got a better leg than Russell. Yeah. But,
Russell nailed a longer field goal.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I think French might have a better leg. I'm not so sure on that. But Russell, I saw something that he is comfortable. He feels like he can make a field goal from 57 yards out. I'm not sure if that would, in game situation, if he could pull that off. But, he's been pretty good. I'm sure Badger fans would like to see this game come down to a field goal at the end because South Carolina's kicking game is far superior based on overall statistics. But I think Russell has been fairly trustworthy this season.
Yeah, since they made the change, I mean...
Troy, can I cut you off for 1 minute?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed in the studio, but we had a similar issue at an earlier ramble, and it did let us stay on, talking on air here. But for whatever reason, it's telling us that for being live, we only have about a minute something left. But we're going to, try to keep going till 1:30. Half-hour show. But I just want to make both of you aware of that.
Yeah,
for some reason it's saying we only got a minute left. So
yeah, I saw that, Evan. I'm not sure what the studio problems are, but I have the iPhone YouTube recording going, so we'll continue talking. If we do get disconnected, we'll find a way to get back together. And where I was going to go with that point, Dave, is as we've talked about everything now, and we've previewed the game a little bit. What's the outcome? What's your prediction? How do you think the Badgers are faring tomorrow on New Year's Day in the Capital One Bowl?
Well, personally, in my bold pick'em, I have South Carolina winning, but with a very low confidence. It just comes down to the Badgers. They haven't been able to pull out the close games lately. And whenever it comes down to a possession game, they, for some reason, just fail to win. And I feel like tomorrow's game is going to be very close against South Carolina. And pretty much for that sole reason, I think the Gamecocks will find a way. It also comes down to special teams and, it's making those little mistakes, good clock management at the end. And that's why I see the Gamecocks winning.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That seems to have been a problem with Bielema there, too, is that they couldn't win the close games, and they haven't won close games this year. I wonder why that could be.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to different situations. I don't think it's necessarily always the Badgers' fault, as we saw against Arizona State with that whole debacle in the desert. But I think eventually it'll kind of even out for the Badgers.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the Badgers have had some bad luck at end of games over the last couple of years. You know, I don't know if the football gods are against the Badgers for some reason, but like you're saying, it's always one little thing there at the end, and all of a sudden the game turns against us. But I have to agree with you. I'm also in a bowl pick'em, and I, like you, I didn't pick with a lot of points. I picked with little points, but I did pick the Gamecocks. You know, but my heart bleeds red. You know, I want the Badgers to win, but I also, that's why I brought up the field goal kicking. I look at both of these teams, and I personally think it's going to come down to, again, one of those little things, a field goal, maybe a last drive. And as much as I love my Badgers, I'm not sure if that offense is built to go on that last 3-4 minute drive to score a touchdown to win. That's why I'm leaning toward the Gamecocks. Where are you going, Evan?
It might be the homer in me, but I just have a gut feeling that Wisconsin pulls it out. I just have a gut feeling. I just, like listening to, Gary Anderson, listening to James White, Borland, Abadaris, hearing like how important getting this bowl win is for them, and just the way Anderson's approached this entire year, and especially his press conference today, as he starts off with talking about preparation and then goes, yada, 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 let's play the game. He seems very loose and relaxed. I see the Badgers getting, it'll be a close game, but I just see the Badgers getting the win.
Well, I know Dave isn't probably a daily listener, so it's not often, Dave, that Evan and I disagree. So we disagree on this one, and that has to be our weekly disagreement, Evan, and that's a good one. Like I said, my heart bleeds Wisconsin, so I really hope you're right, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope Dave's wrong, and I hope the Badgers pull it out tomorrow. But as we talk, and you had mentioned Anderson in a press conference, Evan, and I know, Dave, you're the lead writer for the Badgers, so why don't you give us kind of a breakdown of how you thought Anderson did in his first year at the helm of Wisconsin football?
Well, I think heading in, when you looked at the schedule, there were some tough games on the board, like Ohio State and Arizona State, and while the Badgers fought valiantly in those games, they came up short. But I think a lot of people kind of figured a 9-3 record would be something they end up with, get a New Year's Day bowl. Obviously, with the situation they were in at the end of the season, dropping that game to Penn State with a BCS bowl seemingly, right there within their grasp, people were disappointed by that. But I think when you take a step back, it's always tough to come into a new team, especially when you're revamping the defense, a completely different formation. I know they pretty much stuck to the same offensive philosophy as, typical Wisconsin teams, the ground and pound, power running game. But, there are some wrinkles in there, and I think the players really took to the adjustments, and, there's not much you can do with the passing game when you have 3 new starters coming in. That was obviously going to be a weakness heading in. But even with Sojourn Shelton, he really stepped up and became that number 1 corner. So I think the future is bright there. The 9-3 record, I don't know if I would call it a success, but I would call it, about what people expected.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Shelton. I've gotten, cause I don't know if you probably saw my Twitter handle. I interned for 1250 in Milwaukee, and I was at the home game for Wisconsin for the station, getting audio for them. And just, getting the chance to talk with Shelton after the games and just seeing how he carries himself. I was quite impressed with him, especially being an undersized true freshman. I think he's only about $165, $170, just the way he carried himself. I'm very excited to see where he goes from here. Now, looking at there's 3 players on this current team, kind of want to get your insight on 3 seniors. You have Borland, you have Abadaris, and you have James White, 3 guys that have been around for a while. Now, looking ahead for them in the future, do you see their games transitioning well to the NFL? And especially a guy like Borland, who's a bit undersized, like where do you see his best fit in the NFL?
Well, I think all 3 will certainly get drafted, whether it be day 2, day 3. I'm not sure if any of them are going to be first-round picks. In fact, I'm fairly certain none of them will be. With Borland, obviously the size has been his biggest knock, but, man, you watch him play, it's unreal just how he flocks to the ball, and, his pass coverage.
I love him.
His pass coverage is probably also a knock, where he's not usually someone who drops back into coverage, but he's able to recover quickly and doesn't allow, anything to get out of hand that's already, that he's maybe lost his man already. But, I think he can be a second or third round pick, and I think, he can be a starter in the next level for a long time to come. With Aberderis, he's been incredible for being the only real legitimate option on Wisconsin and not having the greatest quarterback of all time throwing the football. But, he could be someone that maybe works out of the slot. He's a good deep threat. So he has his fair share of drops as well, but with how much they throw to him, it's, probably that's the way it's going to be. But he could be someone that gets picked up in the third or fourth round, I think, and can kind of work his way into being a role player in the NFL. The one player I'm not so sure about is White. I think teams always value blocking, and he could be a third down back for that reason because he's, able to pick up the blitzes, and, I really haven't even seen him make a mistake in pass coverage this season for the Badgers. As far as his running style, he's not really explosive. He can break a big run here and there, but he's not going to be someone who really is able to get extra yards. When he gets hit, he's usually going to go down, doesn't really get too many extra yards. So, he could be I think he will be selected at some point in the late rounds. Whether he's able to stick with the team is something I kind of have my doubts about.
Do you see him kind of being like an Aaron Stecker or Terrell Fletcher, Darren Sproles type guy? Obviously, he's not the explosive playmaker Sproles is, but you see him kind of falling into that role?
Yeah, something like, someone who's not like an every down back, but maybe comes in once in a while for a drop player in sure passing situations.
So as we move into next year and the quarterback situation, Dave, what do you think, and how do you think Anderson's gonna go with quarterback? Is it Stave's job going into camp, or do we have a recruit that we're looking at, or is there somebody on the current roster that you think might challenge him as the starting quarterback? As you had said earlier, he has had kind of an up and down season, inconsistent at times. Like you hit it right on the head for me. His play, and Evan and I do a lot with the Packers in our ramble, and it reminds me kind of the Matt Flynn. He'll lock in on one guy, and Stave has a problem that I see anyway of going through his progressions and finding option 2 or 3. So what do you think is going to happen as we move forward into 2014 with Badger football and the quarterback position?
I actually think that's a pretty good comparison with Matt Flynn, kind of the way not going through progressions, things like that. But I think, Stave will start the bowl game. I think he enters the spring as the number 1 quarterback. But by no means does he have this thing locked down. There's just too much. There's a good 4-star quarterback recruit coming in, DJ Gillens, who I don't know if he challenges for it right away, but he'll be in the mix. Tanner McAvoy will be adjusting back to quarterback after switching to defense. It'll be kind of interesting to see what happens with him if he doesn't end up winning the quarterback job, if he switches to wide receiver, which is something they tried him at before this season, or if he goes back to defense. He's really an interesting player to watch there. But, he was a 4-star JUCO recruit, so he's not to be taken lightly. And another 4-star recruit, Bart Houston, who is a redshirt freshman this year. We saw get some garbage time snaps this season, but the coaches say he has the best arm. It's just a matter of, becoming a better practice player and just being more consistent. I mean, Stave obviously hasn't been very consistent this season, but he's, had a solid season. You look at his numbers, and why he's won these quarterback battles coming into the year is, he's a good practice player. That's the reason. That's how you win these things. He performed well in the scrimmages, and that's how he beat out Houston last season. I think Houston is his biggest challenger, and my personal belief is that Stave maybe finished after this season as the starter at Wisconsin. There's just too many eye-rolling moments with him when missing receivers and not going through progressions and staring down receivers.
So having both feet on the ground when he throws.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he just can't really create his own play. It's about action or Aberdash to make a big play for him. So, I see someone else starting in place of him next season.
Yeah, and it's actually, Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Evan.
Go ahead, Troy. Go ahead, Troy. I should change the subject for me, so go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's kind of disappointing because there is times when I watch Stave play, and it looks like there's all the potential in the world there. And so it is disappointing. I've heard the same thing. I don't cover the Badgers as in-depth as you and Evan do. I'm more of the spectator, watching things, reading things that you write. But I hear what you said. He's looks good, and then he just gets into the game situation, and it's like his full potential just doesn't come out. So a little bit disappointing there. I thought we could get more out of him myself, and that's why I'd asked the question. So I appreciate that input. Looks like the future looks bright at quarterback, though. A lot of options. So go ahead, Evan.
Well, I don't know how closely you're following the recruiting trail. I know you mentioned one recruit they got coming in, but there's a big decision coming Saturday for a five-star recruit, running back Joe Mixon, and Wisconsin's in his final three along with UCLA and Oklahoma. Where do you think he chooses the Badger cap, or do you think he picks UCLA or Oklahoma? What do you think?
Well, just as someone who covers the team, would be awesome to see Joe Mixon pick the Badgers and see him develop and as a Badger. I feel like signs have kind of been pointing towards him going to Oklahoma. It's pretty amazing to see the Badgers even get to the top three with someone of Mixon's caliber. You just don't see that at Wisconsin. And the way Anderson's been recruiting, you see guys who are 5 stars and high-end 4 stars really seriously consider Wisconsin. So I think that in itself is pretty amazing. To get Mixon would be, probably the best get in Wisconsin recruiting history when you just look at how players are rated. I have my doubts that he ends up picking Wisconsin, but man, I'd be thrilled to see that.
That leaves me.
He seems to be loving the attention right now. Following him on Twitter, he's just loving all the attention right now.
Oh yeah.
Dave, you had mentioned something that I think, and I know a lot of people that wouldn't even know what we're talking about with 4-star, 5-star recruits, other than if you follow college football. But I've also noticed that too, what you were saying. Before we were there, Wisconsin was there, getting good quality players, but now we are getting some attention from these top recruits, and we're starting to see Wisconsin move up, when you're looking at recruiting classes. Why do you think that is? I mean, yesterday I was telling Evan, we were talking about Badger football. I grew up in the McLean years when the Badgers were the bottom of the Big Ten and all the way through this, and then Alvarez came in, turned this program around, and it's nice to see as a Badger fan that we are getting legitimate recruits coming to Wisconsin to visit, to actually put us in their top 3 or top 5, which 5 years ago, 6 years ago, even when we were winning Rose Bowls, you didn't hear a lot of those recruits considering Wisconsin. What do you think has been the big change to be able to see that? Because as a Badger fan, I love it. Even if he doesn't choose Wisconsin, it shows me that this program is now on the map, that these big-time recruits will look at Wisconsin legitimately. What do you think has caused that?
Well, I think when you look specifically at Anderson, what he was able to do at Utah State in 4 years, basically get his guys in there by his 4th year and build that program up so quickly, I think was incredible. I think a lot of people are like, oh, what's the big deal? All he did was, go to this, not so significant bowl in a previous game, but he's recruiting at a school like Utah State, and he's made connections out west, and, he still goes back to Utah. He's, really big on trying to recruit Samoan players as well, just because they have a fullback recruit who's coming in as Samoan, and also they want to get some guys on the defensive line as well. But, with Anderson, he really focuses on that West Coast, and he wants to get at least 20 recruits. He said, I think, out of Florida was one of his quotes, and obviously get the big-time guys from in-state. As far as building the program, what Alvarez did, it's nothing short of a miracle, really. A lot of that comes down, I think, to coaching. It's not like Alvarez really brought in high-end recruits or even Bielema, really. But I think just like the system the Badgers have in place, they recruit to their strengths, get those big offensive linemen and just pound the ball and, just shove it down the other team's throat is really what their MO has been for the last 2 decades. And I think Anderson has, carried that over, realizing this team's strengths. I think you'll see recruiting begin to – it already has started to change, obviously, with Anderson, the types of players he's recruiting. And I think you'll see the offense really begin to change within the next couple of years. But Yeah, the Badgers are on the map now. They could have a top 20 recruiting class based on how some of these last big names go. And, they're not necessarily a powerhouse. I think they're just below that tier. But, they're consistently a top 20, top 15 team, and they're right there. And I think kids realize that. And they don't do anything flashy, but you want to play for a good program, a team that'll, get you into the NFL. And Wisconsin can do that.
Yeah, especially if you're an offensive lineman.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
And with that said, I want to wish everybody, and I know Evan and I both want to wish all of our fans a very happy New Year. We hope that you have a great holiday. We want to thank Dave Radcliffe for joining us today. Again, he is the lead writer for the Wisconsin Badgers on Bleacher Report. Hope you enjoyed the ramble today. There will be no ramble tomorrow on New Year's Day. Evan and I will be back on Thursday to do Packer preview against the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday afternoon. Home playoff game at Lambeau Field. Packers versus 49ers. Evan and I will recap that game on Thursday. With that said, we wish everybody a happy New Year. Be safe. We want you all to be able to listen back in on 2014. With that said, we'll see you at the next red light. Hope you have a great day, everyone. Safe holidays.